Okay, it looks like it's just about 9:30, so let's get started. Welcome to the webinar. This webinar is entitled Fats, Oils, and Grease Management for the Food Service Industry. It's part of our Businesses Preventing Pollution webinar series. This webinar series provides different webinars specific to certain industries, but also webinars presented by organizations like the DNR, Sustainable Twin Ports, and other places that have, and Douglas County, that have sustainability programs or green programs for businesses where they can, save energy or become more efficient or prevent pollution, things like that. So we have a bunch of different webinars. If you're interested in viewing any of the other webinars, you can visit our website at www.ci.superior.wi.us/business. And the past webinars are archived there, but you can also register for future webinars on there. And these webinars will continue throughout the rest of the summer and the fall. We also have our Environmental Matters webinar series, which is more for individuals than for businesses, but the topics are still applicable, so that might be something that you want to check out as well. So these webinars are presented by the City of Superior Environmental Services Division of Public Works, and my name is Jillian. I'll be presenting the webinar. Let's get started. So, just a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today in the webinar, and this one should be fairly short. First of all, what are fats, oils, and greases? Why are they a concern? We'll talk about the ordinance for a bit. Prevention of them ending up in the sewer system, grease interceptors, storage of fats, oils, and greases, and recycling. So, what are fogs, or fats, oils, and grease? They're made during food preparation. They're found in foods like meat, cooking oil, lard, butter, dairy products, shortening, and sauces. And the best example that I can think of for fats, oils, and grease is bacon. When you cook bacon, your pan ends up with all this nasty, liquidy, greasy stuff. So that's a good example. Another thing that I think of is pizza. If you take a piece of pizza and you put a napkin on it, when you pull the napkin off of the cheese, sometimes some of the cheese comes with it, but also you end up with big blotches of grease on the napkin. So you could see those are just some examples of where it's really obvious to see the fats, oils, and grease in food. So these end up in the sewer system when food goes into a garbage disposal or when dishes that are used to cook or eat foods with a lot of fat, oil, or grease are washed. So even if you're not dumping bacon grease directly into a sink, it can still end up there eventually. And we definitely don't recommend that, by the way. So the main source in restaurants are typically deep fat fryers because they produce a lot of fats, oils, and grease, obviously, since you're cooking things right in the oil. Other ways that they can end up in the sewer system in restaurants are from pre-rinse stations or dishwashers, compartment sinks, mop sinks, floor drains, floor sinks, and trough and trench drains. Also from grease removal systems, but those, if functioning correctly, should keep them out of the sewer system. So we'll move on to why we're concerned about them. So why are fats, oils, and grease a concern? Fogs can enter the sewer system as a liquid and then solidify as they cool. So that bacon grease that we talked about, if you leave it sitting for a while, it sort of solidifies and becomes this weird, almost butter consistency. So even if you dump it down the drain as that hot, liquidy substance, it will end up cooling down and solidifying into that, which is a problem because it will build up in the pipes as it cools down. So fog buildup can actually reduce or stop flow going through sewer pipes, because if you think of that, you got that solid coating the outsides of pipes and it just keeps building and building as more is put down drains So that can be a real problem. Reduced or stopped flow can lead to backups or overflows and health concerns. So there are, according to the EPA, about 40,000 sanitary sewer overflows per year. 48% of these are caused by blockages. 47% of blockages are fog related. So anywhere between 5 and 17,000 sanitary sewer overflows each year are caused by fats, oils, and greases. So that is a lot. And sanitary sewer overflows can lead to higher sewer costs because of maintenance, which can be passed on to the customer. So really it's a bad idea to put these things down drains. Grease buildup can cause lift station failures and problems at the wastewater treatment plant. At lift stations, grease can float to the top of the water because it'll separate from the water, and it will cause a grease cap, which means it'll need more maintenance again. Another thing with problems that it can cause in the sewers, rotting food that's trapped in fats, oil, and grease can cause hydrogen sulfide to form. When it combines with water, it can create sulfuric acid, which can damage the sewers, so that's another issue. At the wastewater treatment plant, it can increase odors, increase cost of operating. It can also congeal on the surface of different equipment here, and that will decrease the efficiency at the treatment plant. So this has actually been gaining a bit more media coverage lately. I don't know if anyone saw it in the news. In London, there was actually what they called a fatberg in their sewage. Or sewer system. It sounds really disgusting, and that's because it is. It was basically a giant blob of fats, oils, and grease. It was 17 tons, and it took them 3 weeks to remove. So you can only imagine how much that was blocking up pipes if it was 17 tons worth of fats, oils, and grease. So yeah, they can really cause a lot of problems if they're put in the sink or anything like that. And not only at the wastewater treatment plant and on the city's pipes, but if you do enough of it, it could end up in your plumbing and sewer lines. So it could be very expensive to you as well. Also, it could be expensive to you because there is an ordinance against it. So the ordinance in Superior bans any water or waste containing fats, wax, grease, or oils, whether emulsified or not, in excess of 50 milligrams per liter, or containing substances which may solidify or become viscous at temperatures between 32 degrees and 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can't do it because it's against the law in Superior. But it's also a bad idea just in general. Fats, oils, and grease are covered under the EPA's pre-treatment program, which regulates pollutants coming into the wastewater treatment plant. So pre-treatment is basically for facilities that discharge water to the wastewater treatment plant. So mostly, industries and things like that, but the EPA's pre-treatment program does also have some language about fats, oils, and grease. So it's important not to put those down the drain or anything like that. Some ways to prevent fats, oils, and grease from entering drains, other than the separators that we'll talk about in a little bit. Dry cleanup is one way to prevent it. So basically you scrape, wipe, or sweep things before using water, because water will dilute the fats, oils, and grease, but they'll still accumulate, they'll separate out. And you should always use paper towels to clean instead of cloth rags. So use things like rubber scrapers. If you have a spill, use food-grade paper to soak up oil and grease. Paper towels to wipe down surfaces first. And the reason for this is that if you use cloth rags instead of paper towels, you'll end up washing them eventually, and then the fats, oils, and grease will get into the water from the washer. You should also clean exhaust systems, because if your grease or oil get into the exhaust fans, they'll end up on the roof, and then when it rains they can end up in the storm sewers. So that's just some early prevention methods. These preventing spills are pretty self-explanatory, but they're worth mentioning. Empty containers before they're completely full. So any containers that hold any sort of fats, oils, or grease, or any foods containing fats, oils, or grease should be covered and shouldn't be carried while they're totally full, because that will increase the likelihood of a spill. Also use non-slip mats and other safety tools for employees, and that's for other reasons as well, but it does help too with preventing fog spills. So the main thing that restaurants do is use grease interceptors, and these are devices that are installed between kitchen drain lines and sanitary sewer lines to capture fog so that they're not entering the sanitary sewer. So there are two types, hydromechanical, or a grease trap, and gravity. Hydromechanical grease interceptors are installed indoors under sinks. Their capacity is measured by the volume of water that flows through them. They can be probably between 20 to 50 gallons per minute. They're used in places that don't cook a lot of food, probably, because you'd need a lot of them otherwise. So places like, tea rooms or coffee shops, things like that, would probably be more likely to use this type, because they're smaller capacity and they're usually only used for one sink or one fixture. So some places will actually have more than one of these. Gravity grease interceptors, on the other hand, are for full-service restaurants like, Applebee's or something like that, or fast food restaurants like McDonald's or Wendy's or Taco Bell or things like that. These are usually installed outdoors, and they are much, much larger than the hydromechanical. One of these will usually serve the entire facility. So what it does is it slows down the flow of water so that the fats, oils, and grease separate from the water. These grease interceptors, both types, need regular cleaning and maintenance and should be pumped before they're full. This is important, and this brings back the ideas of prevention before they ever even reach the sink. So if you have one of these, I guess technically you could just assume that it would catch everything and still wash things down the sink. But that's probably still not a good idea, because then you'd be pumping it and having it cleaned and things like that more often, which does cost money. And it's probably just easier to try dry cleanup first so that things don't end up going down the sink and you don't have to use these as much. So that's about grease interceptors. So storing fats, oils, and grease. So there might be barrels or things like that outside where you store the fats, oils, and grease after they've been collected. First of all, you need to keep storage containers away from storm drains. Keep them covered at all times. You can place absorbent pads under the containers. You can also you shouldn't use absorbent materials like sawdust or kitty litter, because those things could get into the storm drains. They could blow away or just get washed into the storm drains when it rains. So you really shouldn't use things like that, but you can use absorbent pads and put them under whatever type of container is holding the fats, oils, and grease. Make sure they're not easy to tip over, because if it's in an alley and someone hits it with a car or something like that, it could tip over. So make sure that they're in a convenient location and in a spot where they're not going to be messed with or anything like that. But also use secondary spill containment practices. So have like a portable berm or a pan underneath it, so that if the barrel does fall over, the pan or the berm will catch everything, so it won't end up in the storm drains. Finally, we will talk about recycling. So there are a few different things that fats, oils, and grease can actually be used for. First of all, rendering. So liquid fats and solid meat products can be used as raw materials to create some different products. So some of the things that they can be used for are animal food, cosmetics, soap, so like personal care product type things. A lot of companies that do render these things will provide storage barrels and free pickup, and I believe there's one in Wisconsin. I think Santa Max does that. So that's good, because then you're getting someone else to use them, it's recycling them, and you're not really paying for the pickup or the storage or anything like that. So that's really nice. It benefits you, and it means that it's not going down the drain, which is great. Biodiesel. Fogs can be collected and converted into environmentally friendly biodiesel produced from waste cooking oil. Some vehicles don't actually even need modification to use this kind of biodiesel. In Wisconsin, there are a few companies that create biodiesel from, I believe, from fogs. There's Blue Honey Biofuels in Ettrick, BioBlend Fuels in Manitowoc, Sanimax in DeForest, and Walsh Biofuels in Mauston. Another way that people use use fats, oils, and grease is in anaerobic digestion. So we have a digester here at the wastewater treatment plant, and what it has is microorganisms that break down organics in an anaerobic, so oxygen-free environment. And here we use it to break down the solid material from wastewater. But when it's breaking down, it produces methane, and the methane here, at least, is used to run that process. So it's sort of like a recycling system where it produces methane, and then the methane runs it, and that produces more methane. So that's how that works. But what some places do is they add fats, oils, and grease to digesters, and this is called co-digestion, because it's better than sending them to the landfill. And actually, the fats, oils, and grease can produce more methane than just the regular waste material from the wastewater. So they can actually power the digester for longer. So that's one thing that's done. But rendering and biodiesel are also very interesting and good options for how to dispose of fogs, because then they're being reused, which is great. So thank you for watching our webinar. I know that was a very quick overview of fats, oils, and grease management. If you have any questions, you can always contact us at 715-394-0392 or send us an email or check out our website. We have some other upcoming webinars that may be of interest to the restaurant or food service industry. We have one about the DNR's Green Tier program on September 18th, Douglas County's Count Me Green on October 2nd, and we have one on composting food waste with Susan Darley Hill of WLSSD on October 16th. And then we have our fun little graphic right over there that says our sewers are on a diet, don't feed them fats, oils, or grease. So please make sure to keep fats, oils, and grease out of the sewer system and practice good prevention. And that is all we have for today. So thank you for watching.